Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and unfortunately, we do got some bad news for an upcoming PlayStation exclusive. I know a lot of people were originally excited for this game, but it sounds like a cancellation is unfortunately pretty much all but confirmed by this point. So we're going to get all of that today, as well as a Nintendo Switch 2 update. Sounds like its DLSS feature, which is a central focal point, might not necessarily be as powerful as we originally thought it would be. However, I don't necessarily view this as a bad thing, and I will explain why today. First, though, do make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. That way, every time I post a new video, it'll be delivered directly to your device. It makes it just a little bit easier to stay updated with your daily gaming news dose, which goes live every Monday through Friday. So do make sure to hit those buttons. But with that said, let's just go and jump right into the video, starting off with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And this right here, in my opinion, is a pretty big flaw with critics, because they often combine their scores for games that have both a multiplayer and a single player component, which doesn't really tell the entire story. I think that we all kind of understand that Modern Warfare 3 doesn't have the best single player campaign, and it probably does deserve a lot of the criticism that it's getting. I have no problems with that. It sounds like Activision rushed into the market as a full-scale game when it probably shouldn't have been. But the thing that we have consistently seen online is that fans are loving the multiplayer. I've seen a lot of fans even believe that it's the best in the entire trilogy. And that right there is kind of the weird part, because that's what Call of Duty is all about. Most people who buy Call of Duty are not buying it for its single player component, but instead they are buying it for its multiplayer. And that has always been the case. So fans of the series, they're kind of confused on why its Metacritic score is so low compared to the other games in the series. Now, some people might claim that that's Xbox tax at work. Okay, whatever. But I think if anything, it just kind of shows you why maybe you should review both multiplayer and single player separately. I mean, it's just a major flaw with how reviews work. There should be two different portions of the review. You should have a score for the multiplayer, and you should have a score for the single player. You shouldn't have to lump them together, because they're completely different experiences. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? But nonetheless, despite those scores, as expected, Call of Duty is putting up some huge numbers. Activision just revealed it's already set a new record for highest engagement in the new Modern Warfare trilogy. They said that Modern Warfare 3 has more hours per player overall. It's the most engaging third mode in Modern Warfare history, and surprisingly, players are even putting more time into the campaign, again, per player. So it does sound like that they're off to a pretty good start so far. We'll see a little bit more about this next month when those NPD results come out. But yeah, I don't think that this is necessarily a huge surprise. Call of Duty is a monstrous franchise, as we all know. But with some of the controversy that we've seen over the last few weeks, it is notable at the bare minimum. Let's go and move on, though, and this is pretty cool. CD Projekt Red announced a physical CyberPunk 2077 Ultimate Edition for the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5, and the PC, or at least I would like to say that this is a really cool thing. As a fan of physical media, I like the idea of having a more complete edition of Cyberpunk on disc. That means it has all the fixes and patches it's gotten over the last few years, but however, there are some caveats here. Apparently, and this came as a big surprise, but the Xbox Series X is actually the only edition that is, actually complete. It will be the only edition that comes with Phantom Liberty on a disc, whereas the PS5 will instead come with digital code. And then as for the PC, and this shouldn't really be a surprise, but it will be a downloadable version. A lot of PC owners don't have a disc drive, so that's why companies opt out to do something like this. The same thing applies to Baldur's Gate 3 Deluxe Edition, which the PC version will come with a downloadable version. But it is a little bit surprising that there is a difference between the PS5 and the Xbox Series X version. A lot of fans are very upset about this situation, so CD Projekt did respond, and this was their reasoning. They said that the reason for the difference is how the Phantom Liberty is included in the Ultimate Edition is due to technical requirements specific to each platform. So I'm not exactly sure what those technical restraints are, but I'm thinking maybe it's how many discs can be included included. This is really the only thing that comes to my mind right now. The Xbox version does come on 3 discs, so maybe that's the reason. I mean, I'm just guessing here. Let me know if you know of any PS5 games that has 3 discs included. But either way, CD Projekt Red is pointing the finger at Sony. So I guess with that, and this isn't exactly an ideal situation for everybody, but if you do have both platforms and if you truly want the complete set on disc, the Xbox Series X version right now will be the way to go when it releases on December 5th for $60. Okay, so let's go and talk about a PlayStation game, though, because it sounds like one of their high-profile upcoming exclusives has unfortunately been pretty much shuttered by this point. Now, there's been rumors about this for a while, but according to the often leaky Jeff Grubb, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is essentially dead. You can see posted up here, he went on to say, Sony is wanting to be done with it. My stuff comes from PlayStation. It feels like it cannot happen without a partner like Sony. Sony seems to be out. With funding pulled, to me it's definitely done and no reason for anyone to be working on it. The reality is, maybe someone somewhere is imagining it could happen and someone could be working on it. I don't know that far. They would have to find someone to make that happen with. I know Lucas has wanted to make it happen for years, so I think if Embracer can find someone, maybe it can still happen. Okay, so basically, PlayStation is out on this game. They're done with it, which I don't think that that's necessarily their fault, per se. It's not some huge secret that Embracer has been having some issues, especially with this game. Last year, Bloomberg reported that the studio that was originally working on it, Asper, showed a vertical slice of what they had ready for this game, and apparently it did not impress at all. Whatever they revealed must have been pretty disappointing, because shortly after that, layoffs sadly hit the studio, and at the time, there were some talk about moving this game to an entirely different studio. There were some discussions that maybe Saber would take over, but here we are a year later, and instead it just kind of sounds like Sony is completely out. And based on what Jeff is saying here, that essentially means that this game, it no longer has the funding to make it a reality. So, I mean, yeah, I think hearing that is incredibly disappointing for fans of this series, because, I mean, if you're unaware, a lot of longtime Star Wars fans, they believe that this is one of the very best Star Wars games ever made. You know, it did win several awards back in the day when it first released on Xbox, so there absolutely was some legitimate excitement for its return, and that's why it's just so unfortunate to hear news like this. I mean, we were finally going to get the return of KOTOR, but instead it sounds like it's just not going to happen, or at least for the time being. I guess with that, though, one thing that we can kind of look at, and this is one thing that we know, is that there is an interest to revive the game. We know that. They've already tried to revive it once. Maybe it didn't work out, but they tried to revive it. And Jeff even said himself here, LucasArts, they want this game to happen. And, you know, if Embracer, if they find somebody else to fund it, who knows? Maybe it will eventually make a comeback. It might not necessarily be under Sony per se, but there is a possibility that somebody else could swoop in and maybe pick this game up. Now, I'm not exactly sure who would want to pick it up. Xbox, they kind of seem like a prime choice here, just considering their history with KOTOR on the original Xbox. So could they maybe have some interest? I'm not entirely sure about that, just because of the red flags that it's gotten so far, but, you know, it certainly can't be ruled out. All I'm trying to say, though, is that hope isn't completely lost. Maybe somebody else could come in and pick it up. But either way, definitely don't expect a KOTOR remake anytime soon. For the time being, it does sound like the current version of this remake is pretty much dead. Moving on, though, we did get an update for the Switch successor, and this is coming from Digital Foundry, out of all places. They're very well respected, of course, so you might want to go and perk your ears up for this one, because according to Richard Ledbetter's sources, he was told that the Switch successor will in fact have the highly rumored DLSS, which obviously is a huge thing and is expected by this point, but it might not come included with Deep Learning Accelerator, or for short, DLA. Now, what he says this means is that if the Switch successor has DLSS that comes without DLA, it would be unlikely that the console would be able to upscale to 4K resolution, and that more realistically, it would be like 1080p upscaling, possibly 1440p if we're lucky, depending on the game. So if what he's saying is true, the Switch successor might not necessarily be a 4K machine as maybe some were hoping. But honestly, I don't really think that this is some kind of big issue. For me, I wouldn't go in expecting Nintendo's next platform to be on par with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Yes, we have heard that the visuals might be similar, but in terms of technical power, I just would not go in expecting that. That's not really what makes the Switch an attractive option. It's the hybrid form factor that makes the Switch so special, and I think with that in mind, 1080p resolution is perfect for a handheld console. The ROG Ally is also a 1080p machine, and then you have the Steam Deck, and that's 800p. So for a handheld, I think 1080p is perfectly in line. Now, as for docked mode, the Switch successor sounds like it could be closer to the PS4 or maybe even the Xbox Series S, and even that I think is okay. I mean, I've said it before, but if Nintendo makes a console that's on par with those machines, that is still a pretty massive upgrade for Nintendo that we really haven't seen for a very, very long time. Honestly, I feel like we haven't seen a big power jump from Nintendo pretty much since the GameCube days. And I mean, look at the PS4 as an example. That is a very capable console. There are some ridiculously good-looking games on that platform, such as God of War. You have Red Dead Redemption 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. Those games look incredible. And can you imagine a Nintendo-developed game like Zelda or Metroid with those type of visuals? That sounds truly amazing to me. And I mean, you can even look at the Xbox Series S as an example. It is designed as a 1080p machine. And games, they do still look good in that resolution on the big screen. So I personally don't have a problem with this at all, especially considering that the Switch successor is, it's going to be designed with that hybrid form factor in mind. Let me know what you all think about this, though. Are you okay with the Switch successor being designed as a 1080p machine or not? Moving on, though, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is heading to Steam sometime here soon. You can see posted up on Twitter. The official Ever Crisis account said that we're thrilled to announce that Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis has been published to Steam. The release date will be announced later, so please add it to your wish list and stay tuned. So, I mean, I'm guessing that we'll see this game on Steam before the end of the year, or at least hopefully. I do think that this is an interesting package for Final Fantasy VII fans. I do like the art style. It's very attractive in how they're kind of reimagining the original Final Fantasy VII experience and some of the games that are related to Final Fantasy VII. And I do think that its art style lends itself to other platforms beyond just mobile phones. I mean, that's really always been the disappointing part in my opinion. But with that visual art style, because it is so attractive, there might be a real interest from console and PC players. And, well, sounds like we're going to find out here soon enough when it eventually releases on Steam. Hopefully, though, they won't stop there. I'd still kind of like to see this game head to other platforms as well. But I mean, this is Square Enix that we're talking about here. Unfortunately, we went through the exact same pain with the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. It took those games a while to move to PC and then consoles, and I don't know. Square Enix's business decisions don't always make sense, but hopefully they will come to their senses sooner rather than later and bring these games to all platforms. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though. We're asked you all, would you rather have a new IP or The Last of Us Part 3 from Naughty Dog? And the vast majority of you voted to move on to a new IP. Now, I did notice in the comments, though, that several of you mentioned, a return to Jack or Uncharted. And, honestly, I'd be thrilled by that as well. Both of those are great series. Uncharted is actually a top 3 franchise for me. But, one way or the other, I'm with you all here. I'm personally ready for Naughty Dog to move on. Just anything besides The Last of Us. Now, I personally really enjoyed the first game. I thought it was great. Maybe not as much as Uncharted, but, it is still a really, really good game. Now, I wasn't a big fan of the sequel, though, so now I'm just kind of ready for them to move on to something else. And the thing about Naughty Dog is that, they do a good job with new IP. As a studio, they have never really relied on one singular series. They've always been able to move on to new projects and excel with those new ideas. And I think it's time that we see the next thing from them. But an even more ideal situation is for them to maybe be able to revive one of those older series, like a lot of you all mentioned in the comments, and then plus make a brand new IP at the same time. Now, if they could do that, then we really kind of get the best of both worlds. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.